රාජ්‍ය මණ්ඩලයේ රාජ්‍යනායක සමුළුව පසුගිය ඉරිදා අවසන් වුණා. එහිදී වැඩි අවධානයක් යොමු වුණේ ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ මානව හිමිකම් ක්ෂේත්‍රය පිළිබඳවයි. CNN නාලිකාව සමග පැවති සාකච්ඡාවකට එක් වූ බ්‍රිතාන්‍යයේ ශ්‍රී ලංකා මහ කොමසාරිස් ක්‍රිස් නොනිස් මහතා පළ කළ අදහස් මේ.
Dr. Chris Nonis is Sri Lanka's High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, and he joined me earlier from Colombo. Excellency, thank you for joining the program tonight. The first question, of course, is, are you surprised at the amount of criticism of your country holding this Commonwealth Summit that we're hearing internationally?
No, I think that what you have to understand is the context. We've had a 28-year conflict with terrorists, and finally, after 28 years, we achieved peace in the country under the leadership of His Excellency President Mahinda Rajapaksa, and finally everyone's free of the autocracy and hegemony of terrorism. But one has to understand that there's a tremendous influence from those who funded the terrorist conflict, who are now carrying out really a proxy propaganda war. So no, it's not surprising at all that the proxy propaganda war is continuing, but certainly what we realize is that over the years, as people realize the wonderful reconciliation, rehabilitation and reconstruction program that we are carrying out in Sri Lanka, that gradually that proxy propaganda war will lose its currency.
But of course, the big concern remains the fact that there still is a long way to go as far as reconciliation is concerned. And of course, the biggest concern there is the fact that there are still these allegations out there of alleged war crimes in the dying hours of the campaign to oust the Tamil Tigers. There's talk of indiscriminate shelling, of no fire zone. There's talk of executions. Why not address all of that? Why not put all of that to rest by starting an independent international investigation into everything?
Because we respect the independence and sovereignty of your country, and we expect you to respect ours. We don't need an international investigation when we have had a vibrant civilization for 2,500 years. We have perfectly educated people, and I think we're perfectly capable of carrying out our own domestic inquiry. And that is precisely what we're doing. If you look at the Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission, it's a very holistic, very comprehensive, very impartial report. And actually, if you do come to Sri Lanka, you'll find that we've made enormous progress. I mean, let's look how we've been after the end of the conflict of May 2009. You know, the A9 was opened. We removed the emergency regulations. We had 297,000 people.
But sir, and I don't think anybody is doubting. I don't think anybody is doubting the fact that there has been progress since the end of the Civil War. But there still is a lot of reconciliation that needs to be done, and there certainly can't be full reconciliation if there is not justice. And there are many people among the Tamil community in your country who say that justice has not been done, that their rights are still being fundamentally infringed upon, and that there is the need for a broader investigation into what happened in 2009. There's a lot of video out there. There's a lot of evidence out there. Why are you not looking into that more, especially in light of the fact that you have the summit there right now where you could adopt further measures?
The Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission, it is important for you to understand, is not based on the principle of punitive justice, where you punish people. It is based on the principle of restorative justice, where each one gets an opportunity to be able to hear what went on, whether the victims or the perpetrators, and that's the essence of the LLRC, and it's the similar report and the similar principle behind the TRC of South Africa.
It is also important to bring all the facts on the table and to look at exactly what happened during the end of that conflict, isn't it? I mean, you will agree that it is fundamentally important for the people who were affected by all this, for the community who were affected by all this, to understand what exactly happened there.
It is very important, but as I say, the whole fundamental principle of the LLRC is restorative as opposed to punitive justice. That's number one. The second point I'd like to take you up on, which you mentioned earlier, where you said a substantial amount of the people who were affected are still say there's no justice. That's manifestly untrue. It is important to realize that the majority of the opprobrium, the vitriolic diatribe that we have encountered over the last 4 years comes from a small group of people, but it happens to be the same group, the same institutions. And if you really look at who they are, they're either people behind them who funded terrorism, who made it funding of terrorism as a business. That business has now ended. So this issue, it is very important to understand that this very vitriolic diatribe that we sometimes hear is predominantly coming from a small segment of the diaspora communities and a small segment of people, of funded institutions, who have their own collateral agendas.
Well, sir, you say that the people who are criticizing you, are a small minority in the diaspora, but there are also those heads of government who are simply not attending this summit because it is in your country. You have the Prime Minister of India, you have the Prime Minister of Canada, you have the Prime Minister of Britain, who was very critical, who says in a bilateral meeting he's going to bring all these issues up. You have William Hague of Britain, who said that clearly there were crimes committed in 2009 and all of this has to be dealt with.
Well, the three countries you mention, curiously, what you have to look at is where is our diaspora largest, wealthiest and strongest. And the three countries you mentioned happen to be in the top 5. There's your answer. Just look at it. Each country, each leader has their domestic political considerations. We understand that. After all, they're politicians. We understand that each country has their domestic electoral compulsions. We're a vibrant democracy, and we cherish the principles of democracy and development, the twin pillars of the Commonwealth.
If you're telling me that you cherish the principles of democracy, then I'm sure that you also cherish the principles of free speech, for is it? Why is it that journalists that are coming to your country are being heckled when they try to visit, for instance, the North? You have a team from the British broadcaster ITN who was prevented from going into the North on a train because of demonstrators that show up. Apparently demonstrators showing up everywhere where this crew goes. You have Sri Lankan journalists that are also running into issues. You're saying people need to visit the country and need to check out how great things really are. Why are they being held back?
I don't think anyone's holding anyone back. The point you're trying to make is that people are protesting against other people. That is precisely what happens when different people go to your country. Even some of our leaders have been heckled time and time again. Why? The response we are given is the response you gave, is that you are a vibrant democracy. And that's the response, sir, I'm giving back to you. It is because we're a vibrant democracy, it is precisely because we believe in free speech, that we encourage divergent opinion. And I think you should respect that.
Thank you very much for joining the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
බ්‍රිතාන්‍යයේ ශ්‍රී ලංකා මහ කොමසාරිස් වෛද්‍ය ක්‍රිස් නොනිස් මහතා පොදු රාජ්‍ය මණ්ඩල සමුළුවේ මාධ්‍ය මධ්‍යස්ථානයේදී මාධ්‍ය හමුවකට එක්වමින් මෙලෙස අදහස් පළ
I think we've had an extremely successful Commonwealth Youth Forum, Business Forum and People's Forum and Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. But what is particularly important, in addition to the country delegations that have come to attend CHOGM 2013, is the fact that this has been attended so well by the world's press, in addition to the Commonwealth press alone. And I think this is an opportunity for us to enable us to show you the reality of contemporary Sri Lanka, and as we take on the chair of the Commonwealth, to be able to really forge a very strong identity for the Commonwealth. So now I just open the floor for any questions that you might have.
David Cameron's statement last morning, was just not cricket. You don't come to a host country and insult or threaten the host country and its president with ultimatums. His exact words were that he would take us to the UN Security Council using his mandate to do so if the report wasn't delivered by March. Your comments on that, please. Firstly, I think the CHOGM is actually a forum for all Commonwealth countries. It is not a forum for bilateral dialogue. The bilateral dialogue can happen in the parallel sessions, but certainly I think the most important thing about a CHOGM is that it should be really for dialogue between all Commonwealth countries. We also fully understand, of course, that at the political level that there are some countries which have a substantial, wealthy, powerful and extremely large diaspora. And that can sometimes control the fairly negative and anachronistic narrative towards countries like Sri Lanka. If you do take some of those countries, some of them, Britain is one of them. So we fully understand that each person has their domestic political constituencies and their own considerations, their own electoral compulsions, and some comments that are made, of course, are made in that context. We fully understand that, after all, they're all politicians. South Africa or Northern Ireland were not hauled into the UN Security Council. despite their atrocities. What would the High Commission in London do about David Cameron's statements and his intention to punish Sri Lanka?
Essentially, we understand why certain statements are made by particular countries, by particular leaders, whether they want to boycott the summit or whether they want to make very strong statements, because we understand that the driver is very much a very strong diaspora. And there, I hasten to add, I do not demonize the diaspora. Many people demonize it. But I think the majority of the diaspora, perfectly educated, perfectly decent people who mind their own business. It is only a small percentage of the diaspora within these countries who have made terrorism a business, and they funded it. And now that the conflict has ended, what they're doing is turning a percentage of that funds towards lobby groups, towards opinion leaders, towards think tanks, and in some countries towards legislators and parliamentarians. That is what we realize. And it is that influences. Even if you look at the great, sort of the substantial negative publicity, even in the UK, some people quote some parliamentarians. If you really think about it, there are over 650 parliamentarians. But the constant negativity only comes from maybe less than 20 of them out of 650. And that has consistently happened. We need to understand this. You must not allow us to be subsumed by this whole thing, as if the entire Britain is consumed by this. Not at all. If you think about it, Britain is our second highest source of tourists to the country. Of the million tourists we had last year, 114,600 were from the UK. They come, they love our country. They're coming in increasing amounts. And I'm proud to say as a Sri Lankan that every transaction in the London Stock Exchange today is run on Sri Lankan software. What a wonderful thing that is. And we have a tremendous educational relationship between the two countries. So I don't think we should get too fazed by comments that are made, particularly if we understand that comments are made partly to pacify domestic electoral compulsions. You have to always look at when a leader makes a statement, just look at this. Just ask yourself the question, when is his next election? And then you have your answer. So I think irrespective of what someone says about it, that does not in any way justify.
You've been holding office as the High Commissioner of Britain for a period of 2 years. And during these 2 periods in question, there has been many reports, many documentaries released by Channel 4. And the government has stressed that these footage are fabricated and have reiterated that these footage have no basis at all. As the High Commissioner of London, have you taken any steps to challenge this in a court of law in Britain?
Successive High Commissioners, including myself, including the government of Sri Lanka, has looked at it from a legal perspective. But many people, in a democracy, many people will have divergent opinions. Many people will have negative as well as positive publicity. Channel 4 is an extremely marginal TV company. In Britain, the significant percentage of British people, and I lived there for 28 years, do not in any way even bother to look at Channel 4. That's probably why it's called Channel 4 and not Channel 1, 2 and 3. And I really don't understand why so many of you in Sri Lanka get so worked up about it. If you ask the average person, whenever Channel 4 has shown a documentary on Sri Lanka, people here get sort of quite irate about it, and justifiably so. But the point is, we all realize, as well as the majority of people there, this is not a documentary. If you look at it, it's more like Star Wars in terms of fiction. It's very emotive. It's very emotionally disturbing. But it is not responsible journalism. And when you start off, you realize that. You realize, for example, the main actor, Vani Kumar, portrayed as an innocent graduate, was actually, had very strong LTT and ELAM activist links. So your answer starts from there. From there, you realize if the outcome is prejudged, then there is no little purpose in itself. Many people have looked at it. We've seen that a lot of the metadata has been erased. We've seen that a lot of the sequences have been reversed. a lot of the footage, even the original footage showing purported soldiers but wearing slippers, for example, has been erased from the footage. And there are many aspects to it which have been challenged. But the point is, it is very much a peripheral documentary. If you look at the second documentary of it, it is something like 80 to 90% a repeat of the first. If you look at the third documentary, that's again 80 to 90% a repeat of the second. So I wouldn't call it a documentary. It is unauthenticated, uncorroborated, and not a second of it has been actually filmed originally from a Channel 4 journalist or an ITN journalist. So it ends there.
The issue is here, Your Excellency, in terms of taking litigation. Well, even though you say it's a fiction and also Star Wars, yes, we also know, but the British Prime Minister himself has taken that footage as a footnote to accuse Sri Lanka. Now that is a danger point he's making. He himself take this as authentic. So does it mean then the Sri Lanka should alarm and take legal action on this? Because if the British Prime Minister himself take this serious, then why not Sri Lanka take this serious and go ahead with the litigation?
No, the point is this. I think you're missing the point. The question is whether litigation within the laws of that country is the best option to take and whether it will work according to the media laws of that country. That is an entirely separate issue from the issue as to whether anyone, whether it is the British Prime Minister or any opinion leader, quotes the Channel 4 footage. You have to understand there are two entirely different issues. The decision regarding litigation, the decision regarding the need for the imperative for something to be done is entirely different from the decision as to whether litigation will succeed within the confines of the laws of that country. And that decision has been taken time and time again by legal experts. That is an entirely different thing as to whether many people quote footage, many people are sometimes misguided, some people are misinformed, but many people quote things. People quote the Darusman report as a UN report. It was not a formally authenticated UN report. It was never requested formally by the UN. It was a private report. Many people quote that. Many people don't quote that section within the Darusman report itself that says that those things within it are written in the form of a narrative and require a higher threshold to be considered evidence. That's the most damning sentence in that entire Darusman report. But who quotes it? Because the majority of people don't read the report. They just read the sound bites and use the sound bites. That is why it is important that we continue engagement with the press and by the press. And incidentally, there's nothing to stop all of you, if Channel 4 is so aggressive here, it is a peripheral marginal TV station. There's nothing to stop you all doing the same with those countries to question why things are said. And I think that if you all in the media have an enormous role to play in challenging some of these extremely dubious viewpoints.
Mr. High Commissioner, now you insist that the issue raised about taking Channel 4 to court is more or less irrelevant. And as far as I am concerned, the laws of libel came from Great Britain, and from what I know of the laws of libel in Britain, if you can't take a documentary maker for clear libel to court, there's something different between the law I know and the law that your advisors know. So it seems curious to me that they say that they cannot take this documentary to court on libel, and then also you sought to say that we should not place too much importance on what it entails, the documentary itself. But the Prime Minister of the country you are accredited to, the Prime Minister himself, said before he came here that the footage he saw was very disturbing. I ask you, what are we going to do about it? What are you going to do as High Commissioner about it?
Well, to respond, as I said, the government of Sri Lanka, we can argue till the cows come home about the legality of taking Channel 4 to court. That is not a decision made by the High Commission of London. That is a decision made by the government of Sri Lanka. Number one. That is a decision made by your government as well as my government. right? It is not a decision made by the High Commission of Sri Lanka. Number one. Okay, that is made by your legal experts, who are also my legal experts. So we're both in this. Number one. So we don't need to revisit that. That will continue to be looked at. You may have a different view, but that is for you to discuss with the legal experts of this country. Number one. Secondly, the discussion regarding the diaspora, I never said that the impact of what the diaspora do are marginal to the central discourse. I did not say that. What I said was that the diaspora, the vitriolic diatribe that we sometimes get from what you call the diaspora, is only emanates from a very small percentage of the diaspora. That is important. The rest of the diaspora are not very aggressive in this same manner, nor do they have such vitriolic diatribe that this small percentage do, and those are the ones that funded it. I think that is very difficult to change, because that depended very much on that simple thing, money. And it still continues to depend on that. And we need to understand that. The money that we spent on the conflict, on fighting, on the arms and fighting the conflict, we are now spending in Sri Lanka on development, on reconciliation, rehabilitation, reconstruction. What happened to the money that they were spending? Are they spending it on reconciliation, rehabilitation? No, because they don't need to. That is what you need to understand. That the money, even though it has dropped down substantially from what they used to raise, there's a substantial amount of funding, international terrorist financing, still going on. And it is this that is being thrown at opinion leaders. And we need to understand that. When they throw a substantial amount of funding to lobby groups, to legislators, to parliamentarians, to different people, that is where you have an issue. And we need to understand that it is not a matter of discussion and discourse. It is a matter of the fact that several $100 million was raised, particularly from the large countries which had a wealthy diaspora. We all know that. And a percentage of that is being used to continue the propaganda war. Now, until we understand that, we will always be questioning, well, why is this so? And I think it's important that we understand that we recognize it. And that is where I think the responsible media can also play a part. So that's the second point. The third point regarding Prime Minister Cameron, yes, I fully agree, as I've said before, that this is not a place to internationalize, that we are in no position whatsoever to have to accede to any form of internationalization of the investigation of Sri Lanka. I fully agree with that. I've said it already. But that does not stop an individual from quoting a particular TV station or a particular booklet. It is not quoted not only by Cameron, but by many other people. It's what we get all the time. But the point is, what I'm saying is, we need to also be on the offensive in terms of what progress has been made. We within Sri Lanka need also to be more focused, because we can certainly add to that narrative. We can add to the positive narrative. We don't need to always be defensive about a negative narrative. I think we can be far more proactive about a positive narrative of things going on in the country that is not in any way to detract from what people say. But if we always dwell and continue to dwell on that and wonder why, as if we're bemused in some manner, then I think that is not going to succeed. I think whilst we take these on, and no one is saying we should not take it on, of course we should take it on. And I agree perfectly that the point that the Prime Minister of England, if he did what is always useful for anyone, I think, for anyone, if they want to give or pass judgment on a particular country, I think it is important for them to come and achieve a balance. I think what is very important is whoever comes to the country, rather than simply visiting Colombo and visiting one area, like one particular conflicted area like the north, I think is equally important before they seek to comment on the country, to appraise themselves by also visiting the east and visiting the south,
and meeting the indigenous Tamil, Muslim and Sinhalese people even of Colombo, because it is only then that they will realize that people have been living together here for so many years. It is only then that they will truly realize the demography of the country. That is to a large extent not known, and that is something people realize when they come here. But you see, my point is this: it is not to ignore the negative, but it is important to encourage people to see for themselves, rather than simply taking it from what they see as a voice of a particular person or a voice of a high commission. They all want to see it from their constituents also. It is important that we understand that. And I think that we have a role to play in that. But I do believe the enormous effort that has been made over the last few years to put up with the lobby groups, to combat the lobby groups behind the scenes, to bring parliamentarians here, to bring the press here, to bring heads of government here. That is what we should be doing, and that is what we are doing. And that is why today we have CHOGM in Sri Lanka. And I think we should be appreciative of that and move forward with that positive spirit. Yes, you hear people still being negative, but let me tell you, those voices, little by little, will die down. Time will tell. And the mere fact that CHOGM is here today is a demonstration of that. Thank you.